Hello, everybody. It's Susan again, and here this time I'd like to welcome back after almost a year my friend Bukola, who's an astrologer from New York and further afield, and has just the most profound insights about things that I really would like to share with you. And I'd like to talk today with you, Bukola, about the whole thing that's going on right now. We kind of feel it now that Saturn is kicking off a retrograde, maybe more intensely than we have for the last few weeks, but we're in this mini grand trine now, and it's changing us. And so I wanted you to feel very welcome to share your thoughts with my listeners and followers, and to give us an idea of where your energy feels this is coming through at this time. And for anyone who's interested, he's a fantastic astrologer. You can definitely benefit from a reading with him, and I'll put all of those details in the description box below this video. So, welcome to our channel.
Thank you for having me here, Susan. Again, I'm looking forward to it. I'm very excited about it. I'm very happy to be a part of anything that you're doing. I know that whatever we come together to do, it will benefit the community. And greetings to everybody. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. Some of you are familiar with me, some of you are not. And hopefully we can expand to be a bigger family. I'm looking forward to that. We
Yeah, maybe I can just
Sure.
remind everybody that, in fact, we did our first conversation already last year. I think it was almost exactly a year
Hard to
ago.
believe it was a year already.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it was about the nodal ingress. So we were a little bit ahead of our time, and the nodes moving into Pisces and Virgo was what we were looking at, and it's still relevant now. So I'll post that video also in the description below because that was also a fantastic.
Absolutely. Yes, yes, absolutely. We were just before that, and now we're actually in that reality.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yes. So,
What's your take on this energy? Let's maybe begin with this Saturn retrograde. I know that you just recently posted a video, like just before we did this video, so I haven't had a
hmm
chance to listen to that. But
sure.
what are your thoughts here now that Saturn is asking us to reconsider the last few weeks?
Wow. Well, uh, whenever I consider Saturn, I immediately refer to my character, and I ask myself, okay, am I aware, or what do I need to be aware of in my character? The other thing is, where do I have challenges with my own authority or with relating to others' authority? Beyond that, where am I showing or not showing obedience in my life? There's something that I suffered to learn. There's something that I really went through a lot to um, comply with, as a rule or a law that it may have taken a lot of effort or sacrifice to learn. And with all of that, I like to weigh it against, where I want to pass through to, where am I trying to get? Are there any kind of blockages? Are there inconveniences, things of that nature? So Saturn has a way of tempering the character, and it has a way of bringing accountability to us, in ways where we're not able to outstrip, resist, or even go around, but it's a lesson that we have to take. And so when it comes to Saturn, I think about all of those things that are not necessarily pleasant, but is greatly rewarding, and it ends in a sense of authority and the self. On the opposite end, Neptune, what comes to mind is my imagination, the source of everything that I am or everything that I could possibly be. If there are limitations, if there are fears, um, guilt, shame, anything of that sense, I resort to how I'm relating to my imagination, you know, and with Saturn and Neptune in pair in this position that it's in before this retrograde, and Neptune already in retrograde, which I believe started July the 4th. Um, this situation tells me that concerning my identity, Aries, and concerning the power of my imagination or subconscious, Pisces, am I in control of my imagination? And am I the one who's determining the ideal of my image and identity? And in asking myself that, uh, I think if I were to be honest, I probably lend out a lot of control and authority, to other agencies other than myself. And so there goes my work. So in the retrograde, I could look forward to realizing those things sharper. And so, it's like preparing my attitude to um, get in there and get involved, with whatever it's going to take.
Yeah, this is extraordinary timing, I think, for all of us. And I think your insight around what we need to do personally to take back reclaim some kind of inner authority or agency that's conscious to us, that we're aware of why we're making choices. This is a really important thing for our times, especially because now there's so much AI that's confusing things and distorting things that we thought we knew so well and that we're now doubting so
Mm,
many things around us. So it really is, it's necessary, it's incumbent on us to come back to our own inner authority and not to put too much of our hope and senses and attention outwards to all of these distractions, really, which I think in some cases are deliberate and in other cases are simply accidental, but it's still taking us away from ourselves. So this is
mhm.
a crucial kind of recalibration if people are awake to it and aware of the potential that it offers. So you're saying about how it's so difficult. The energy of Saturn can be so challenging because it hurts to grow, doesn't it? I mean,
Oh, yes.
we have to work hard to grow, and that's unavoidable. Even if you're just an innocent child growing, you have certain times where the muscles ache and the body aches because the body's changing so rapidly. And that's
Yes.
part of how you know you're moving from one stage to another. And a lot
Absolutely.
of people in our modern times don't like Saturn energy at all. There's a real rejection of it. And even in some of my videos, I've had people say, "Oh, you're too preachy. You say things in a way that's very, top down." And I'm not aware that I do that, but my ninth house stellium, no doubt does that. But at the same time, it just feels so strange that people reject the potential learning that they could get from somebody, and their focus is on rejecting because it feels authoritarian or it feels like it's top down. And
Yes.
there's where we can make our biggest mistake because we can throw things away that
Hmm.
can be highly instructive. And it can be a really good time. The Saturn energy of elders, I feel, is extremely important right now because a lot of our global population is very young. I think probably half of the world population is under 30. And
Mm,
I'm not sure about that statistic exactly, but I know it's roughly that. And those people have never lived a life without some kind of device, some kind of things coming through their phone or through a computer. And the elders who remain have a sense of what was different before. And that actually, in
right.
that Saturnian way, can provide a certain context for relativizing what's going on right now. So,
Mm.
yeah, this is, and what's your take on the sense of how this might contribute to the understanding of this mini Grand Cross that's happening? Because Saturn seems to be, in my way of looking at it, kind of asking us to slow down. An accelerated energy that was really palpable in the first half of this year. And then Saturn seems to be, it feels the message is that we need to reconsider a lot of the things that we thought that we kind of took for granted or didn't think about and just kept
Hmm.
rolling through on, AI being one of them. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts is that Saturn could be asking us not to get carried away with our ideals, and what we want to take initiative in, um, in forming the new self. Obviously, Neptune is dissolving an old concept of the self that related to uh, the incorporated being, of that Capricorn Pluto transit. And because of the deliverance of Uranus, bringing us out of the corporate form of the self, in many ways shaking that reality, we realize that it's time to create a reality that makes more sense to the natural person. And so we're at a crossroads with it. There's a duality that's taken place in a sense. And, when you think about duality, the two fish of Pisces, one is dissolving and one is providing the essence that's to be formed, going in opposite directions. So, there's a concept of the old self. How do I apply due process or whatever necessary process to commit to through Saturn to dissolve these parts of myself, show accountability to, what has to be properly closed, and how do I show the authority, discipline, and commitment to initiate? 2 degrees Aries, that's still initiation degrees. It's very early, it's very young, it's very fresh. So where are my initiatives that I can take to form this new um, identity that seems to be a natural fit rather than a corporate fit? And to me, it looks like Saturn is grounding that imagination to reality, to where we don't get carried away with it, but we have a realistic expectation, realistic outlook, and realistic checklist, of what needs to be done and how. I believe this retrograde is going to give us exercises that lets us know where our maturity is at with all of it, and what it's going to take, and exercises that shows us, did I learn yet? Did I learn to determine who I am from my own heart imagination, or am I still relying on the validation, uh, the permission, the ideals of others, or even images that I see in comparison, just as you mentioned, with Neptune through a computer screen or a phone screen. Have I found my way to form my own ideal of myself? And what does that look like? Those are some of the things that comes to mind for me. Um, and you mentioned, Susan, also about um, somewhere along the line of maturity. You did chime in on that with, Saturn. It can be the Debbie Downer is to bring
Yes.
in details of productivity, and accountability. What's interesting about that is, Juno just went direct in Scorpio. And when I think about Scorpio and Juno retrograde, that is, it's like a journey through the wilderness where we commit to what we find of ourselves in that wilderness. You know, um, I'm realizing, wow, I didn't work on this about myself. I just left this hanging. What is this? Some wild, beast jumping out of the trees, screaming, hooping, hollering. Oh, that's me. I didn't know that. Wow. So, it's like I'm collecting all these monsters and I'm dressing them and saying, hey, hold up. Okay. I got to take accountability for all of you. Okay. And I also have to find the moral commitment. And where do I get those two things is that I believe everything is leading us up to freedom. Sagittarius is the next focus because I noticed that the Sun and Mars will be at Sagittarius at the end of this retrograde. And I'm really convinced that freedom is a step after the wilderness. And it just so happens that Juno going direct at the time that Saturn goes retrograde, it's our commitment, Juno, coming out of the process that brings us out of the wilderness, But what did we find in the wilderness that's different than what we didn't have when we went in? Um, I have every reason to believe it was what we're going to need in freedom. And what we always will need in freedom is accountability and moral commitment.
Right.
Always, right? So the accountability factor, we're absorbing, we're certainly going to learn that with Saturn retrograde. But the moral commitment aspect, I was blown away to realize that possibility with Cancer Jupiter transit. What better place to revive our moral commitment, our moral compass, our real humanity than the divine feminine Cancer?
Yes.
Jupiter expanding divine feminine Cancer. That's the real matriarchy, the source of matriarchy. It's our motherly instinct in all of us, every one of us, the lunar force, you know?
Yeah.
Imagine, yeah.
The other divine feminine energy, aside from now we've got the mother archetype with Cancer and the divine feminine expanding with Jupiter in Cancer. Jupiter often represents pregnancy and children and babies and
Uh-huh.
parenting. And we have Juno, but Juno is with Black Moon Lilith at the time that she's stationing direct, and that's
Uh,
an added layer because I track what Black Moon Lilith is doing when it's doing something close in conjunction or opposition or square to a placement that seems significant.
mm,
And this is adding to that element of where have we not been honored or where have we not taken on our voice of authority? And
mm,
where are we pissed off is my short form for Black Moon Lilith. And why are we pissed off? Is it because we've abandoned ourselves and our spirit and we're exhausted because of that and we're, waiting for somebody to come along and fix it? Or
uh,
can we integrate that Saturn dimension of inner authority and responsibility and the Jupiter and Cancer dimension of nurturance and care
mm.
that we can actually then take responsibility for why we're not in a happy place or a good place. Why are we a Debbie Downer? Why? What's wrong? What are we pissed off about? And I find that
Right.
the majority of time when we're angry at something or someone, it's because there's an aspect of ourselves that we're angry at. And this is a brilliant symbolism there with Juno. And, Juno for me is also righteousness in relationship. It's right relationship. It's fairness in relationship
Yeah.
as well as the desire for connection and all of that
Uh,
together. So that goes even more so for the connection.
explains that frustration you're talking about. Why
Yeah,
am I not getting this outcome or result?
yeah, yeah. And
Uh-huh.
we can see this collectively in a really powerful way right now. So if we don't work on ourselves internally and try to come to a place of understanding where we have betrayed ourselves and where we're angry about that, we can be much more productive in the way that we confront authority figures outwardly or in society in general or the condition of society. Because this is
Mm.
the Pluto and Uranus are going to be taking a lot of our attention is into society and what's going on. How do we reshape things? And that has to come from a place of inner awareness, or we're really in big trouble.
So Susan, I wonder what you think about based on what you just perfectly explained, and I can personally relate to those feelings and thoughts. Is that during we had Cancer Mars retrograde this year. Do you think that some of that transit uh, was part of us understanding some of that? What's your opinion on that? Or
Yeah,
your
I can vouch for that personally because
I
uh,
know I can, you
Uh,
know.
yeah, because that transit was going through my first house, and
Wow.
luckily the retrograde didn't hit my moon, but I got the moon, in September, moon conjunct Mars, and it's not comfortable because where we are most at war with ourselves is within our experience, our early childhood experience of our family.
Absolutely.
And that is where it kind of got propelled outwards into the world, but
Right.
it was only magnifying what is already there. And I think
Absolutely.
this is something we need to be aware of. There's too much of a projection that is just simply, again, missing the Saturn element of taking responsibility for why we're in the condition that we're in, or why we're in the mood that we're in, or why are we in the literal physical space that we're in,
Yeah.
rather than railing at some random they, them, the government or whatever the thing is. And not to say that there's nothing that can't be improved in all those dimensions, but it's to say that we
Hmm.
have to start from that place of inner integrity and the inner awareness of why I'm upset in the first place. And,
Hmm.
and it's, I'll just give you a very personal example that's happened over the last 48 hours, which is that an old acquaintance um, who happens to be Jewish has
Okay.
uh, been leaving messages in my Instagram account because I've been posting stories on my Instagram account bringing attention to the condition of Palestine and what's going on there and trying to correct some of the mistruths, the things that are being claimed as true on more sort of mainstream media
Yes.
and showing the evidence for why that's not true. And this, for me, this is quite an important thing. And whether it's, in Darfur or if it's, anywhere else, it matters what's
Yeah.
going on right now. And I'm alive in this moment and I'm aware of it. And um, he was actually accusing me of promoting genocide, and the genocide that he was thinking of was opposing his people. And I was trying to rationalize with this, and I realized that there's no way to rationalize with somebody who is in that space of pure projection where they can't actually digest what their own feelings are. And it just was clear that that was never going to resolve. So the only way is to just set it aside. And that's actually a very Cancerian way of dealing with things. It's also very sort of Mars and Cancer, just no, don't deal with it.
I see.
Don't go there. But I'm just using this as an example because we're in this intensity of these times where our
Is. My goodness.
our psychological, we have the capacity as a human being, and it's part of a self-protection mechanism to
Hmm.
shut down what is really happening in front of us because it's too big, it's too huge and too painful. And so that's a defense mechanism that just has us dissociate and shut down. And people can do this with things that where the evidence is really, really strong and very clear. And the point is that you will not be able to reason, and that's very Saturnian, this idea of look, sit down and be reasonable. Let's talk
Uh-huh.
about this. These are the facts. This is the three-dimensional reality. This is what the picture says. And when somebody tells you that everything that you're seeing is only AI and it's not happening, and it's actually the reverse that is true, it is, you start to realize that this is where you can continue to engage and feel like you're going crazy, or actually come back inwards, come back to yourself and think, no, what in this moment is true for me, and how can I find this inner knowing, inner place of peace, so that I'm not tempted to keep reaching out or lashing out or engaging in things that are simply destabilizing and coming from
Mhm.
a place of um, pain, basically, coming from the pain and trauma. And that's very Mars in Cancer, to, like I was saying, the origin story of most people is quite challenging. And
Yes.
and that Mars in Cancer can represent a really early, it's not always trauma in the sense of the most extreme events, but some traumatic experience of being cut off from the family or being separated within the context of family or being outcast in some way that felt extremely painful or even being abused by one's family. And we have gone through this process now over the last, what was it, from last September, so nearly 10 months, that we've had that in our recent conscious awareness. And that's something that is quite significant for me because if we look at the recent times that Mars and Cancer dynamic has been there, it's been really at peak crisis time or just preceding crisis time. Uh,
Yeah,
there, there was a time a couple of years before 9/11, for example, when Mars was in Cancer and stirring up a lot of, because Cancer is nationalism as well, right? It's the national
absolutely. Yes, it is.
and it's going hand in hand with this very tense energy that is Pluto in Aquarius and the Uranus now in Gemini, which is the US seventh house, and where Mars is also, along with Uranus, in that seventh house of open enemies. And it's challenging times because we sometimes are not even really sure who the enemy is. And if we take it to the most spiritual level, especially as Jupiter is in Cancer now, we try and do that. We can see that our mind is our own enemy. You know, the mind is the greatest demon that we have to deal with. And if we can really deal with that and really look at that and see this is where most of the pain is coming from, we can mitigate what's going on outside of us and reduce that pain and try and be able to sit down with one another and say, you know, this is hard, this is not easy, and yet we have to share this life in this space in this moment in time. So we have to find a way to get along. We have to find a way to muddle through this.
Yes,
But
yes.
for me, the most again compelling aspect of this is the Saturn, because that Aries point is just triggered again and again and again. And I yesterday I did a video about there was a conjunction with Jupiter and Uranus at the Aries point in 2010, and that was a momentous time. That was I relayed that to the G20 summit that was happening in Toronto, where it was really the first very blatant, open use of state violence against peaceful protesters, where they were literally doing nothing, and the command from the the police, higher up the hierarchy, was for the police to stand down and allow the violence to happen and allow the destruction to happen, so the media could, record it and show the broader public who wouldn't have been present and didn't know what was going on, that this is actually the demon that they're repressing. And this was a deliberate tactic. And we're seeing that same point. There's a lot of points in that particular chart from June 26th, June 27th of 2010 that are highlighted right now. And especially at this time of the Saturn retrograde, it feels like we're going into that again. If we look at the chart from the 6th of June and the ice protests and the repression around that, it's also resonant with this. And so we're in a period of time where we really have to integrate our inner Saturn so the outer Saturn doesn't take over. The intensity of repression is real. It's a real threat. And so the solution has to come from inside, because otherwise we despair. And that's another Saturn word, to just despair and do nothing.
Hmm. I've come to the same conclusion about that um, Mars retrograde in Cancer, and I noticed that whenever Mars goes retrograde in a sign, it's resetting culture, and then Jupiter comes to um, expand that reset, and nationalism being a topic, and also um, identity being such a common theme with Aries, healing the frustrations of the inner child is what I was able to see around me and with myself from this transit. It's more like, the frustrated baby that's trying to find the nipple. You know what I mean? It's angry, it's frustrated,
Yeah.
and it wants advocacy, it wants security, it wants comfort, it wants reassurance. And it looks very violent, it looks angry, and it can look monstrous, and it's really, as you mentioned, a projection of what didn't happen very early on in your life. And other people around you it's like, okay, I'm going to make up for it through this person, or I'm going to charge this person, with that sense of injustice that lingers in me, you know. So it was a real opportunity for us to address righteous anger. And it was a real opportunity for us to address how um, we could possibly lack command of ourself, accountability, or receptivity with ourself, in what we're frustrated about, what we're angry about. And it also teaches us something about our moral commitment. Because, as I mentioned, if freedom is the end objective, we have to have moral commitment. And what better insight into where we are with our moral commitment than Cancer Mars retrograde? Because if I'm emotionally frustrated, I'm tempted to justify my um, lack of boundaries with myself or with others, with going too far, with saying too much, or doing, doing what's regretful or saying what's regretful, spewing anger and frustration, so on and so forth. When there's that righteous anger inside, I'm right and you're wrong. You know, I went through this and I went through that, so I'm justified to feel this way, to think this way, to speak this way, and to do this thing. Like what we see, going on in the world. People are getting hurt. Um, Bad things are happening, and there's a lot of pain to be expressed that goes generations, decades, lifetimes.
Yeah.
Um, but does that justify, how we share the pain and spread the pain around? I can't, you know, uh, judge anyone for, their experience, but I can say that it helps us to see outside of ourselves that um, the human being can make the mistake of justifying oppression and injustices based on their own righteous anger and perceptions, you
Yeah.
know? And I think that, Saturn has a lot to teach us about who we are when we get that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And another Saturn word is suffering, and the Saturn is reflective of the, as you mentioned right off the top, the pain and the work and the effort and the difficulty that we need to overcome on some level to get anything done, basically, including growing or anything. And
Right.
um, and that suffering is a common human trait. It's one of the things that the Buddha talked about, that all life is suffering, or if you're alive, you are in suffering. And a lot of people, especially New Age type people, don't like to hear that. They want to say, no, it's not happening. That doesn't, you don't have to suffer in life. It's not like that. And that kind of bypassing is also causing more suffering, that not allowing something to be in that realm of awareness. And it's not about dwelling in the suffering, but of acknowledging it. And I find that in acknowledging that suffering, we can actually come to an understanding of other people.
Absolutely. It
We,
begets compassion.
yeah, exactly. That grows our capacity to bond with someone that we on the
Absolutely.
surface may not like or agree with,
Yes.
and who may have even done things that are quite appalling, violent or whatever. And yet we can find understanding in
Right.
anybody if we really come back to that place of this commonality of the human condition, which is suffering. And
Absolutely.
that also with the Mars in Cancer, I think there a lot of that percolated up, and it filters through the emotions and it filters through early nonverbal experience. And if you don't know how to create a container for that, it spills over. And then that spills over into something of an identity. Mars, also the ruler of Aries, is very connected to our identity and what we'll fight for. And I'm just looking back in time to where in May of 2024, so it feels like 10 years ago, but it was only just over a year ago. In
Hmm.
May 20th, Mars was conjoining the North Node in Aries at almost 15 degrees of Aries. Um, and that happened to be in opposition to the moon on the south node. And now, as we're coming up to Mars approaching, it's within less than 4 degrees now of the less than 5 degrees anyway today of the south node. There's something of whatever we, let's say, dealt with since last May 2024, whatever was sort of peak in that experience of the Mars very strong in its own sign in Aries, and now coming to this place of integrating that through Virgo, trying to understand Virgo intellect and rationalism, and trying to understand something based on that whole journey of Mars from Mars in Aries through the Mars in Cancer square to that September, October, and then again from January through April.
Wow.
And now we're
Wow.
in this place where it's coming away from that energy, and now we need to find some new solution. There needs to be some resolution to this. And the Mars South Node can be extremely explosive, extremely angry energy if we haven't done that work to integrate and understand. And if we have, we can release a lot of that. We can release the anger and to understand, well, that energy, that same Mars energy that can produce anger and even fury and violence, can be channeled into service. It can be channeled into something that actually becomes more constructive and taking action based on how we need to be there for others or be
Absolutely.
there even for ourselves. How do you see that Mars South Node?
I I see the Mars South Node as um when Mars goes into Virgo, I picture Mars as like taking an Adderall, you know. And he's detailed, detail oriented, and he has the attention span to address everything in fine detail. And I think of getting assertive towards refinement, you know, seeing the condition of something and asserting yourself to remove what should be removed and to establish what should be established. Digging for the greatest quality, of whatever status or situation that you have going. And I also pair that with the number 9 Hermit card, Virgo South Node. And that usually works against the detriment of Venus. And what I mean by the detriment of Venus is how we can get caught up in um, looking for pacification, avoidance of due process, commitment, responsibilities, um, entitlement, expecting entitlement. I
Mm,
want this, but I'm not willing to Virgo work for it, or
yeah,
apply the necessary process to obtain, or be able to expect the outcome. And I think of getting mature, growing up fast, and um, having the count, having the numbers of what takes precedence, in your life at that time toward um, seeing yourself at a greater value on the other side. In other words, I'm taking command of what I don't like about myself. I'm taking command of what I don't like about my life. And instead of making other people responsible or accountable for it, I'm going to build the character that I could be proud of or satisfied with. That's what the sixth house does, for the 10th house. You
yeah,
know, uh, the 10th house is that character that gives us, the access that we want or the status that we want. It's where we have the capacity to fulfill duties and responsibilities. But all of that is built by the sixth house. What you do every day. How you do one thing is how you do everything, they say, and character is destiny. So if I don't like the outcome, the sixth house is where we create outcomes. and Mars is where we assert our initiative, and willpower, to channel that frustration into a productive outcome, as you just mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. For those listening who may not be yet solid in their astrology, the Virgo is the sixth sign of the zodiac, so that's where the association of Virgo sixth house comes from, and there's
Mhm.
a lot of overlap in terms of those identities. So also that nine number is really strong. Mars is represented by the number of nine, and also it's a 9 year, and globally, and so it's a big
Look at that.
nine
Mm,
moment, a big nine
look at
moment
that.
at the moment.
Oh, completion. Look at that.
Yeah, and so there's something here
Mm-mm-mm.
we need to really take to heart in terms of what it is that we're ready to face in our own experience, or what it is that we want to step up for or to step into, I guess, where it can't go on this way is one way of saying that. Like, we can't go on like this. I see that sort of Saturn Neptune retrograde as part of that. It's like, okay, we thought it would be like this, and it's like, oh my God, I see where we're going with this. We can't go on with this or like this, in that sort of Hollywood hyper dramatic way. And we have to turn around and figure this out. And and that's, I think, where we're in this kind of moment. It feels like a cusp of something extremely important that's happening, and it requires some deep thought and consideration. And the knee-jerk response or reactiveness, and that very common now reactivity that I think social media has hyper stimulated in people, um, and the manipulation of media and the manipulation of propaganda has triggered us deliberately to be this way, so that we're not thinking and we're not deep and we're not focused on the the ins and outs of situations. We're focused on our knee-jerk reaction and our emotional gut wrench feeling about something. And
Ah,
it's extremely important, I think, if we want to go from this nine to the next cycle, which is the one cycle coming in 2026 that says, look, we're doing something new now. That
yes.
that new thing can be a living nightmare, or it can be something that actually really does shake up the paradigm and make something different. And people seem, at least in my experience, there's so much expectation, so much waiting. And this is also the deadly side of the trine. Trines are very flowy, very easygoing energy. As I said in a recent video, if you get trines, you just get an ease around whatever it is. It's like, yeah, that's all cool, man. If you're going to be spying on me 24/7 and following everything that I do, and giving me digital ID and tracking my bank statements. And, you know,
Right.
people don't realize that that also is the trine. And it's really important for us to take that agency from the Saturn.
Complacency.
Yeah, that complacency it can be deadly.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and that we can also, see that as again a kind of fight, flight, freeze response, of the child who's wounded, and that comes back to that Mars Cancer thing that awakened in us something that may be too much to look at, but we need to look at it, or we're going to just keep reproducing it as we keep going forward collectively and in our individual relationships. There's something we have to look at for everyone, that we are um, to avoid us projecting outwards things that we're actually needing to step up and take responsibility for.
That's that part right there. My goodness. Yeah. Uh, uh, avoiding pro projecting outwards what we should take responsibility for. That, oh wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the title of the day.
Right.
Yes, that's the title of the day. You said something that really gave me a sharp revelation. And the internet, for example, I'm from a generation, and you, young lady, might be from a generation where, uh, you know, I was around before the internet became a popular thing. You
Yeah.
know, I remember when there was the dial up there,
Oh, for sure.
all
Yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah.
you know,
Yeah, yeah.
and cell phones, and you got to wait till you get home to make the call or put a quarter
Yes.
in. the phone machine and stuff like
And
that.
you have to talk to
You know,
your friends with your parents in the room.
exactly, exactly. You're on a you're on a house phone with your friends, and your mother gets on the phone, and she chimes in, because you pick up the phone and she can hear your whole conversation. Get off my phone! I got my phone. All that other stuff. So it was a different world,
Yeah.
and before that, before that, okay, notice Neptune came into Pisces the same time when Instagram got popular,
Yes.
you know? And what was that, 2011 or something like that?
Yeah, Instagram came on board in 2010, but it really took off within a year. 2011, when Neptune went into Pisces, I think March or April
Oh my
2011.
God. That's why when you were saying that, that's not something that, what you said is not something small to overlook. We gotta look at that.
Yeah. Yeah.
We are coming to the end of an era. I mean,
Yeah.
that was the internet phase was an era, okay?
Yeah.
And there was a world before it, and there will be a world after it,
Yeah.
you know? And so who we were before the internet, we were totally different. We stayed outside all day.
Yeah.
We came in with grass stains and cuts and bruises, and drank from water hoses, and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody talked to each other, and got to know each other, sat at the dinner table, yada yada, those different type of things. But the internet really changed also how our self-esteem functions.
Oh, yes.
It changed how we gauge value. It changed how we judge and evaluate who we value or what we
Yeah.
value about someone. Um, it's so many things that entered into the consciousness that we didn't have the spiritual technology to deal with, and
Ex-
we had to grow and develop that spiritual technology through the experience and interaction with the internet. So it's like we became, or it's like we produced an AI system within ourselves. While externally AI is here, we also created an AI system in ourselves, that knows how to, uh, you know, judge and calculate all these different realities that you swipe and you see a million faces, you
Yeah.
know, stories and people's lives and stuff. When back in the day, there's a handful of people that you've seen on a regular, or that you related to, or stuff like that. But you know, who are we becoming after that? Are we going to get to a place where the internet is no longer something so impressive and there's something else that comes out? I don't know, but
I think you're on to exactly this moment in time because the
mhm,
internet itself, the World Wide Web,
mhm,
was created in the last Neptune-Saturn conjunction in Capricorn in 1989, and that is this cycle that we're beginning here. The
mhm,
Saturn-Neptune is precisely that. It's like, well, this whole era, as you described,
right.
really clearly stark difference between the before and the after. And I do remember definitely that dial-up tone and
Right.
CompuServe and all of that stuff.
Yeah,
And the fascination with the home computer that was like the size of a sofa or whatever.
absolutely.
And you had all of these things that were they
Yeah,
were also used in a way that was punctual. It was, an hour here or there or doing something. It wasn't very interesting because it was all data on screens. It was all green text on a black background and not very enticing.
right.
And now we've
Absolutely.
got the full Neptune Pisces experience of,
Yes,
of this nothing but images everywhere, images
absolutely.
and fantasy and fiction and all of that. And here we have to figure out now in this new Saturn Neptune this is a whole new cycle of what are we doing and what do we do about this that people are falling in love with AI. They think that AI is sentient or that it's conscious. People are literally claiming that their AI is conscious and that one guy on a program, I think it was on, my son sent this to me because he's into IT and He sent this thing about, I think it was on CBS morning show or something like that, 60 Minutes or something like that. I can't remember, but it was about a guy who was married with a child who fell in love with his chatbot. And this
Oh,
guy was deep in it. He was deep in it. And when the dialogue ran out of memory, because apparently it has a limited memory,
wow.
um, it crashed and it erased their whole relationship, or what to him felt like their relationship. And he said he went into a really dark place. He cried for in the middle of his office. He cried for half an hour. And this is important because the human mind can take us into places that are so disconnected from reality, and then it becomes, what we describe as mental illness is someone who kind of, in a generalized, very simplified way, is someone who can't function in an
Yes.
everyday environment, someone who can't really relate to their surroundings in a constructive or self-affirming way, let's say. And this is very problematic right now. We're on the crest of something where suicide rates are extreme and where young people are self-loathing at a very developmental stage, and especially young girls. And that's directly attributable to things like Instagram. They know that.
Absolutely. And, you have kids comparing themselves, to images that are totally unrealistic,
Yeah,
uh, images of perfect lives, seemingly perfect lives, and,
yeah,
these perfect faces and perfect bodies and, status and all these different things. And, you have a lot of, humans that look at these things and compare themselves. And it's a tragedy for the self-esteem,
right.
and
Yeah,
we lose touch of where true value and where happiness is at too. You know.
absolutely. And that's very Saturn in Aries, because Saturn Aries often has big issues of self-esteem, and there are big issues to resolve in terms of who am I, and am I, what is my worth, and what is my valid, expression of
Hmm.
self, and the oppression of or repression of individuality. And that's something that the Saturn in Aries person has to learn through their lifetime, is to become themselves in a way that feels like they've given themselves some kind of inner authority or agency. And we're here now collectively in this moment, and this is what that's about for me. I think this Saturn Aries dynamic is something about relearning in a way. We have to learn now, what the hell does it mean to be a human? That's the zero Aries point, where now Saturn and Neptune are crossing three times and then coming together, which is deeply symbolic, coming together. Let's make something real out of this. Let's break these illusions and start to come back to what it means to be a spiritual being leading a human life
I
in this moment
think
in
with-
time.
I'm glad you said that, because what I also see with that's consistent with what you're saying is the fact that Pluto came out of Capricorn and lit the last match on that Rothschild Rockefeller, that ruthless Machiavellian get to the bag
Yeah, yeah,
mentality. You don't understand
absolutely.
that corporate greedy ruthless mindset that we shared in a society, that really hurt the family, hurt the children, hurt the community, as we became that way. um, I'm really convinced that somewhere in the Aries Saturn transit, we're going to learn, especially based on Uranus provoking, converting duality into wisdom and love, um, the identity, the duality of the identity, okay? Because there's the natural person and there is the incorporated person,
Yeah.
the legal entity, you know? And I think we could possibly begin to realize more the natural person, the status of the natural person, uh, against or in contrast with the incorporated, person or legal entity, because that incorporated person, it worked well for the Capricorn theory, that we all were agreeing to as a collective. But with this Jupiter in Cancer, that's a lot of gravity that's pulling against or out of that Capricorn energy. And you have Pholus going through Capricorn too, shaking up what we were used to with it, you know?
Yeah, I didn't pay attention to Fullest. I'm glad you pointed
Yeah,
it out. Oh, wow.
you
Yes.
know, it's like shaking it up, you know?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and this Jupiter going through Cancer, that is a some okay, 9/11 Jupiter went through Cancer as well.
Yeah.
And if you notice, a catalyst has to manifest that. So a reality that awakens our desire, our longing, and our appreciation for family, loved ones, togetherness, community, morals, virtue, the things that last in life and the things that mean everything in life. It's like, you know, I remember before when I was really young, I was in a car accident, and I noticed something in a car accident that afterwards, um, nothing matters except for what really matters.
Yeah.
It's just
Oh,
something about an emergency or like a close call or something. It's like nothing matters except for what really matters.
100.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and tragedies can show us that. God forbid a tragedy. But what I'm saying is that Cancer Jupiter transit could enlighten us or remind us of what really does matter, where happiness and fulfillment really is at, and what more than family, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And
Yeah,
this is all the more, I think, helpful to remember those big events. Like you said, there's this kind of feeling of nothing else matters. Like, I'll clear my agenda,
yeah.
no
I still
problem. And
remember.
that's-
It's like after 9/11, nothing mattered except for what mattered. You
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I think we could be, coming into a moment like this where something triggers a vast awakening of that fragility of human life. I didn't have an accident, but it was a medical accident in my case that I nearly died and then came back, and you realize, wow,
Mm,
that's like life hanging on a
mm.
thread, and you are challenged to completely rewire your way of relating to your everyday life. And
There you go. Rewire. That's right.
yeah, and here what we had at 9/11 that we don't have now, which is one good thing, but we've got other shit going on. It was
Yeah.
Pluto Saturn opposition, and Pluto was on the US ascendant at the time of that. That's a very incredible chart to explore.
Oh, good.
And in the second house, the US second house, which is Capricorn, we have Mars conjunct the South Node, just like we have coming up now in 10 days' time, or less than just about a week, I guess. Um, and Jupiter itself was just leaving the North Node, so it had been conjoined the North Node. So my son was born just 2 or 3 weeks before that event, and so he has this in his chart. It's a really dynamic chart. He's got um, he still has Venus in Cancer as well as the Jupiter North Node. But
Uh-huh.
in the 9/11 chart, Venus is in Leo, and it's exactly at that point where Venus is in the 9/11 chart, which is exactly where we find Mercury today stationing for its retrograde cycle. And I find these overlaps
Wow.
always very interesting to try and look at these patterns that, of course, they're not exactly the same, but they do resonate very, very strongly. And Saturn was in Gemini, so we've got now the movement of the, the trigger, let's say, of Uranus moving into Gemini, which is going to be part of that dynamic of the, especially the US, which really we have to look at because even if we're not American, it dominates the global scene, and that's part of the problem. It's
Yes.
part of the deliberate policy, but it's also a big headache for the rest of the world. And this is where we're in a very tenuous situation right now. So Neptune was in early Aquarius at that time as well. So Neptune had only just entered Aquarius the earlier that year. 2000, 2001 was that big ingress of Neptune. And And that's also something that's building with Pluto coming to almost that same point. So there's a lot of things that are going to be instructive, I think, of this moment in time that will keep in small ways repeating patterns that we've already been familiar with, but it's a new iteration of that. For me, that's astrology anyway, but it's just to keep aware that these are things that we're coming to these places where it feels like everything feels critical. Everything feels really urgent and critical at this point, and that's partly because of these 0 degrees conjunctions or these 0 degrees ingresses that are triggering something that feels like, wow, we gotta figure this out. Something new's happening here.
Yes.
And then that Mars South node, which is always very tenuous anyway. Usually there's some kind of really big event that happens on the Mars South node. There can often be, just like with 9/11 and I don't know if you remember Boko Haram about 10 years ago, there was a Mars South Node connection in, I think it was 2015. And,
Hmm.
and that triggers these terrorist events. It triggers these big, big events. And so we just, not to keep that in uppermost in our minds, but just need to be aware that what is urgent in your life, what is fragile in your life, what is important to you today, and act upon that. Those people who, through the grace of God, didn't go to their job on the day of 9/11, for example, and said, "Oh my God, I really look at life differently now," or the people who didn't get on the plane or whatever. And
Yes. And not take it for granted.
yeah, and then so
Yes.
we want to get to that place where we remember that every day. That's the memento mori. This is the, remembering that every day this could be the last breath. This could be it. This is also the teachings of the Buddha, who's really very clearly said the way you are in this moment is how you will die, because this moment is preparing the next moment and the next moment and the next moment. So you have to be conscious in this moment and clear, who am I? What am I doing? What am I
Yeah.
thinking? Clear your emotional body. And then the next moment will carry this new signature, this feeling
Mm.
of clarity. Uh,
Surveillance of the heart.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
that's also that zero Aries point. It's really like come to this real clarity around how do I want to draw this next breath and take this next step going forward in time.
Yes. And that Mars, that Mars at Virgo, it's like it's like getting ready for court. Um,
Yeah, get your documents in order.
yes,
Get
yes,
your get your shoes polished.
yes, it is. It's getting prepared. That's definitely Virgo Mars. It's like if you see a person with Mars and Virgo Mars in their chart, the way that the person goes about doing things, it tends to be like they're late for a flight. Or it's like whatever, it's like they're late for a meeting, you know what I mean? And
So
all they're doing is just going to get go get
ice
a
cream.
frappuccino or something, you know what I mean? But
Yeah, that's an excellent description. I'm going to remember
yes,
that. That's excellent. Yeah,
a sense of urgency, I think that's the word,
yeah,
sense
yeah,
of urgency. Yeah, you
yeah.
know.
Yeah,
And
and it has that flavor of anxiety as well, which is also
yeah,
kind of a not unique to Virgo, but certainly a signature of Virgo is that
exactly.
anxiety. And that anxiety says, I need to do this myself. I need to do all of this in my time, in my way, in my space. And
There you go.
because of this, the lack of Pisces, which Pisces says, no, we're never alone. We have all of this surrounding us. We have all of that spirit guiding us. We have all of this
Yeah, yeah.
available. And
Pisces is like chill, you good.
yeah,
Pisces is like, smoke a
exactly.
blunt and chill. That's Pisces.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And that whole Virgo energy is feeling like I've got to do this. I'm responsible for this. I have to sort this out. Uh,
yes,
and that creates anxiety because we lose track of spirit. We lose track of what is our um, true place in the world.
not present anymore.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Forward thinking, backward thinking, not here.
Right, right. Not present anymore.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we do have as you mentioned, Black Moon Lilith, Juno, and Vesta in Scorpio.
Oh,
That
Vesta too.
is,
I didn't put Vesta in. Let's have a look.
yes, that's the two. Okay,
Oh my
Vesta
God.
in,
Oh,
you
look at
see?
the girls. The girls are hanging out. Look at that.
Exactly. Okay, you got the girls chilling in Scorpio,
Yeah.
and there's a temptation to hold to the past and the future when it comes to Scorpio.
Yeah.
There's that temptation. It's the challenge of acceptance, of what did happen, of what was the case. Can I accept this? Disillusionment has arrived,
Yeah.
and it's trying to find that attitude of being present,
Yeah.
because Virgo, not Virgo, but Scorpio likes to have control, you know.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's a challenge, and it's highlighting where in our life that we are really challenged to practice being present. You know, um, you can't change the past, but you can change what it means.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
Only through this awareness, only through this
only through this
present
awareness.
moment. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Exactly. Okay, through this awareness, and look what's expanding our awareness. Cancer Jupiter is expanding our awareness of what it means to show up for the self, care for the self, and when we show up in this attitude with ourselves, we remember that attitude with others easily.
Exactly. Yeah. And
Yeah.
we can even get to the point where we remember that there is no other. That's the thing, that kind of Pisces
There you go.
note. Yeah. This is, it's very,
That's when we really have understanding.
yeah.
Is when we realize there is no other. Yes.
Yeah, that's it. And
Absolutely.
this is where the potential is there, and the attention is required from each of us to keep tending to that Vestal flame, right? That's the whole story of Vesta, is the
Oh yeah.
tending to that divine flame, and to recognize the burden that is ours. It doesn't have to be felt like a burden, but the responsibility that is ours to clean our own temple, clean our,
Mm-mm.
like the Vestal Virgins, purify our own home. That's also the Virgo energy in general, where it's about purification, not perfection.
Absolutely.
It's about just coming to this place of being a clear channel, not being some perfect
Absolutely.
being. So there's a lot that we
Flutter.
shed right now. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Um,
So we have support, obviously we have support.
Yeah.
Uh, that the cluster of girls in Scorpio are assisting us with any necessary transformations or transmutations,
Yeah. Yeah.
the hard things to swallow, the difficult things to accept, the trauma, the burden, the drama, they're there supporting us with that. So
Yeah.
we do have help.
Absolutely. I noticed also that Palace is on the moon as we're speaking.
Oh yes, I'm looking at that.
Very rich. Yeah, it's beautiful. Um,
Right.
yeah, so there is support. Like you said, there's literally so
Yeah.
much there for us. We just have to, it's a trust fall, isn't it, this moment in time? It's really like a trust fall. You just have to kind of remember that we were never the ones doing this in the first place, and to come back to this place of listening for guidance and being in a place where we're humble, and that's a Saturn word as well. Finding that humility that is
There
not,
you go. Humility.
yeah, and
Yeah.
true humility, not the fake Hollywood
Absolutely.
version, but the true humility says, yeah, I'm just here taking orders, basically. I know who my boss is, and I just do what I can with what I understand. And in the Indian way, they have a beautiful way of assessing that humility, which is that all that is my grace is the grace of the guru, or the knowledge that I've learned through my guru, from my inner guru, my outer gurus, and all
Uh-huh.
my mistakes are my own. Anything that
Right.
is
Come on.
incorrect or misunderstanding or mistake, it's my own, because it means that was the ego operating from a place of faulty information or faulty connection, and to understand that is not. it's not self-blame or criticism. It's just to have that humility to say that I wasn't open enough to the guidance, that it made me take the wrong step, or it made me
Oh,
say
I
something.
wasn't open enough to the
Yeah.
guy. Oh, wow. Yeah.
So
Okay.
that's the humility that we can work
Okay.
with. That's not about self-deprecation, and it's not about,
Yes.
certainly not about insecurity around identity and things like that, but it's a true humbleness that says, I listen to myself, to my inner guide, my emotional response, coming back to that Cancer.
Yes.
And the Jupiter in Cancer, the wisdom that we have actually founded in emotions, our intuitive wisdom, which is Jupiter in Cancer.
That's
And
right.
that understanding is part of what we're connecting to. It's not
Connecting to the gut.
yeah, it's not us
Yeah.
doing it. It's not the ego. It's not the small
Right.
self making this stuff up. It's us just being connected and plugged into the rest of it, which is again
Mhm.
that North Node Pisces call, basically, come this way, come over here, bring your Jupiter in Cancer wisdom and guide that North Node in Pisces, and take that intuition and the inner knowing. And that's how we get through this transformation period of this movement of Saturn, Neptune going across the Aries point and saying, look, we've got to do it differently now, but grounded in something that
We
feels.
got to do it differently now. You know, when you say we got to do it differently now, what I'm doing is I'm bringing back what you just said before that about humility. Because perhaps with more humility, we will arrive at what we are to do.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
because we're more receptive. We're more open minded. We're more receptive. We have our ego out of the way,
Yeah.
and there's so much more that we can download and receive from that North Node. You know,
And
that
that
humility.
also comes back to that Virgo Mars South Node thing, because that over intellectualizing things and
Mm.
trying to fix problems, or actually what borders on interference in other people's lives, or interference in the flow of things, which
Oh,
is
you can say that again. Yeah,
yes. And that dynamic is predominant right now, so it's like this perpetual trying to
get out
assert.
of your own way.
Yeah, and it's collective as well, because we're trying to assert humanity on top of everything else in the world. Like, rather than participate with life, we're imposing a human superiority over all other life forms. And particularly the Western type, sort of European mindset that is imposed over a global condition that has no relationship to that. And it's such an unhealthy dynamic that comes from being cut off from spirit. And this is, I just want to emphasize for those Virgos out there, this is not a slander against Virgo. It's an
Right, right.
archetypal assessment. It's just to say
Yes.
that over intellectualizing, trying to fix something, the perception something is flawed, is coming from an anxious ego. It's not the reality. And we need to come back to that North Node awareness of the collectivity and the oneness of all, and the beauty and harmony that is already inherent in our cosmic nature. The
Oh, do you see what you just did? Let me show you. Let me show you what you just did, Susan. This is so cool. This is really cool, right? I'm fascinated. Okay, what you just did was you took duality. You took Gemini duality perception and you dissolved it into singularity, which arrives at, well, esoterically, Gemini arrives at wisdom and love through duality.
uh
So you took the crisis of duality and you found the singularity. You see what you just did? And it
yeah,
arrives at wisdom and love, which is what you just expressed, wisdom and love. And Pisces, it's one of these degrees, which I want to say it's the final degree. I will verify it. But Pisces is to see like God through the prism, and
yeah,
to see God through the prism.
yeah,
Look at that. And
yeah,
that's where the North Node is at Pisces, the prism.
absolutely.
Fascinating.
I know that's that Sabian symbol, isn't it? And I can't
Yes.
remember, because I have Mercury at 29 38 Pisces, and my Saturn is at 18 and change, and so that's where the North Node is right now, and that
Wow.
I think that might be the Mercury 29-degree thing.
Yeah.
And the thing that is challenging with that is that I always had this sense that that was what life was all about, that everybody, why was this so difficult for people to see? It was a real stress in it in my childhood way that people couldn't just get along. Like I was a huge Beatles fan when I was a very young child, and for my sixth birthday, my mom got me a Beatles album,
Hmm.
and I was so sad because I found out that they had split up, and I thought, no, how can they do that? And they're angry with each
Right.
other. And so, in my little way of seeing all those things, it was just like, of course you can get along, and that was what motivated me to want to work for international organizations and things. And then you get into the reality of it, and it's painful when you realize that nobody's seeing this.
Right.
And you
Yes.
feel crazy because you're labeled the sort of crazy one because it's too out of the context of our social constructs. And it's really the only way to go through that prism, and this is what I learned the hard way through life, is that you have to step back so that you can see the colors. You have
Uh,
to
you have to
extract
step back.
yourself from the noise or the commotion or the collective experience. Um,
Okay.
and the only way to see that prism, to be able to
Mhm.
relate to it, is to be in your own space. And that doesn't mean a permanent stepping back from society, but it means at least regularly stepping back and coming into your own space, into your own heart, into your own awareness, so that you can see.
Uh-huh. Healthy detachment.
Yeah, healthy detachment. That's it. Yeah, I
And,
had a
and there's a comedian. His name is Patrice O'Neill, one of my favorite comedians.
okay.
And he said one day, because he used to do a lot of radio talk shows in New York, you know. And one day I heard him say, he said, you know, he said you can't understand a person when you're attached to them. But once you're detached from it, it's like you understood everything.
Right. Yes, that's it.
It's like I blew my nose when he said that, you know.
It's so true. It's
Like,
that we
oh, I get it now. You know?
our modern prophets are comedians. If you look
Yes,
around, like all these people who are spitting wisdom everywhere we go, they're
absolutely.
comedians. And it's got to the point where that's the only way people can hear wisdom.
Yes,
Because, and that's actually very Gemini, isn't it? That's that very
it
Gemini
is very Gemini. Yeah,
way of
detached.
living. Yeah. And you have, well, detached but humorful, that kind of
Yeah,
humor and the spontaneity and the lightness of being that Gemini
right.
can have. Which can be too light and too detached, and all the rest of, every possibility has its extremes. But it is the necessary detachment that allows people to hear the message, because the opposite end of that is Sagittarius, which is that more dogmatic, I know everything and let me tell you how it is
Exactly.
energy, and nobody can hear that.
Nobody can hear that.
Yeah.
Nope.
So,
Vein
and I think
popping
you,
out of your neck, and you're just dominating the situation and
yeah.
spitting.
And I think you have a Gemini sun, don't you? I think you
Yes, I do. I have a
yeah.
Gemini sun, and I know all about that Sagittarius South Node. You know, I have to train it all the time. You know, because
Right,
I have a barbarian centaur inside of myself. You know,
right,
so I have to spend time training that. You know,
right. And what
so
degree
yes,
is
that's
your
very
sun?
true.
Are you going to have Uranus crossing your sun soon, or where are you on the?
Uranus is actually it's 8 degrees. It's 8 degrees off. You know,
Okay,
so
so
it's
next
I'm
year
at
you'll
eight
be feeling
eight
that. Yeah,
degrees. Yeah, yeah.
because I
So
started when the sun, sorry, Uranus came to my sun. I really, really felt that probably within 5 degrees, it was intense. A
I
lot
can
of
only imagine.
yeah, and
Only
so
imagine.
yeah, so just buckle up.
Oh my God. And see, I have Mars conjunct Sun.
Ah,
So like
okay.
I don't know. I might have to tie myself down.
Yes, yes.
It's no telling. I,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Find that desert cave somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah,
I gotta
excellent.
plan some adventurous, outings and stuff like that to channel all that stuff.
Absolutely. Take up running for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, really, right?
Listen, this was fantastic to talk
Yeah.
to you again, and it makes me realize that we need to do this more regularly because
Oh, absolutely.
once a year just doesn't do it.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a blessing. It's a blessing.
maybe we can try to find a time in August where we can come together and look at the shifts that are happening when at least Saturn and then later Neptune moves back into Pisces, and we can
Oh,
start
of course.
how these dynamics are shaping up.
Oh, of course. There's no telling what we'll see.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's 6 weeks away, but I'm sure it'll be a lifetime of
absolutely.
experience between now and then. So I thank you again for being so
Thanks for having
gracious
me.
with your time. I know it's really late where you are, and we did an early morning Belgium and a late night New York
Right.
call.
Yeah, we made it work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the
And
weekend.
so I want everybody to take a look at your details. I will put them in the description box below.
Thank you. Thank you. And everybody's welcome.
Yeah,
We welcome
and
you.
you have
We're
a
one big
blog.
community, one big family.
Absolutely. You
Yeah,
have a
spread
very
the love.
insightful blog, very provocative and
Thank you.
thought inspiring. And can you just say your website name, and I will
Sure.
put that again in the description box, and then tell
Sure.
me
The website is www.the hyphen infamous hyphen astrologist
great. Yeah, and
dot
that's
com.
what your name is appearing on
Yes,
as we're speaking on Zoom.
absolutely.
And that's the name of your YouTube channel.
Yes, and that's also the name of the YouTube channel.
And
The Infamous
I will
Astrologist.
link that too. So really wonderful to talk to you here. I really look forward to our next
It
conversation.
was wonderful. Thank you so much. It was a real blessing for me. It really was. I
Fantastic.
appreciate it. I'm looking forward to it, again, anytime. Anytime.
Excellent. Okay, Bukola,
Yes.
see you very soon. Bye.
Okay. Have a good day or night.
Bye.
Okay.